back with you on KNBR tonight. Always a blast to have Grant Cohn of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat come on. He brings the heat. We're fighting fire with fire here. I don't know if y'all can handle these hot takes, but they're coming for you. So hunker down. Here we go. Grant Cohn, Super Bowl or bust, what is your favorite place? Have you been to Miami? Are you excited to go to Miami? Because it's clearly Miami or bust for the 49ers.
I've never been to Miami. My favorite Super Bowl place is New Orleans. I love New Orleans, and I'm looking forward to Vegas. I think that's going to be a tremendous addition to the Super Bowl circuit.
Agree. And yet,
but Miami's terrific. I mean, I've never been there. I'm looking forward to it.
I think we're both looking forward to it. Okay, you look at the 49ers' path. They have to play the Minnesota Vikings. I'm sure you watched the game that they played against the Saints. I'm sure you've watched more than just that game with the Minnesota Vikings. Am I taking crazy pills when I say I don't get it? I don't get why everybody's freaking out about the Minnesota Vikings all of a sudden. They are an immensely talented team that has Kirk Cousins as their quarterback. Why should the 49ers and their fans be afraid of the Minnesota Vikings?
The 49ers should not be afraid of any team in the NFC. The 49ers are the best team in the NFC, and they would pretty much have to beat themselves in any upcoming game. They're clear favorites over the Vikings. That being said, I think I disagree with you a little bit on Minnesota. I look at Minnesota as the second best team in the NFC. To me, they don't really have a clear weakness. You could call Kirk Cousins a weakness, although a quarterback with a 107 rating isn't exactly a weakness. You might say he's not a strength, and that's fair. Although he came up clutch in that one game. To me, He's got a lot of weapons. He's got a defense that's been together a long time, that's well coached, that played well in that one playoff game this weekend.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think the Seahawks have clear weaknesses, and so does Green Bay. I mean, really, I think the winner of the NFC comes out of this game, and I think the Niners are going to win it.
I don't disagree with you that Minnesota is the second best team, at least of the remaining teams. Green Bay is the worst 13-3 team I have ever laid eyes on. I cannot understand how the NFL schedule makers allowed it. What kind of voodoo magic happened to get them to 13 wins? I saw them barely be able to beat the Lions in Week 17 in a must-win game. And then you look at Seattle, and it's just like Russell Wilson, a couple of guys, and some duct tape. I'm with you that Minnesota is the second best team in the NFC, but Kirk Cousins just doesn't do it for me. He had a great throw. 43 yards, Thielen, money ball. I mean, really good. But this is a guy who, if you put any pressure in his face, is just going to curl up. He has a lot of Derek Carr in him, and that's not something I'm looking for come playoff time. What say you?
You know, I'm not going to dump on Cousins. I think I actually like him more than most. I would take him over Jimmy Garoppolo. Although the funny thing is, I don't think Kirk Cousins' teammates really like him at all. Like, he was apologizing publicly to Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen earlier this year, where Garoppolo would never ever have to do that.
Nope.
But let's put Cousins to the side for a second. The way I look at the Vikings is they're an indoor team. Mm-hmm. They're a dome team. They're going to be going on the road. They're going to be playing outdoors across the country on a short week. That's a scheduled loss for them, basically. And to boot, they're going against the best team in the NFC. That's tough.
49ers are going to get an impact player. It looks like they'll get an impact player back on three different levels of the defense. They'll get Dee Ford back on the defensive line, it appears. Quan Alexander perhaps at linebacker. Who knows if he'll be able to go full bore or whatever, but even just his energy, his emotional energy will be a positive. And then arguably the biggest one, even though he's probably the least famous name, is Jaquiski Tartt at safety. This 49ers defense faded towards the end of the year. Are those three guys enough to get them back to at least somewhere close to where they were when they were just kicking ass and taking names?
I think it's all about Dee Ford, because if you really look at it, like, Dre Greenlaw played very well filling in for Quan Alexander. And, you know, Marcel Harris struggled against the Saints, but he ended up playing pretty well by the end of the season. He hits hard. He's an interesting player. I think he's a starter in the league. The issue is not having Dee Ford, because once you took him out, I think the entire pass rush suffered. Even if he wasn't getting to the quarterback, he would get there first. Mm-hmm. And he would make the quarterback hold the ball, shuffle his feet, reset, and that would give Nick Bosa and Armstead and Buckner a chance to get there. I think if Dee Ford can come back and give that speed and explosion on just third – I mean, it doesn't have to be that many plays, like just third down, second and long. Then I think this defense can be dominant like they was the first half of the season. If he's a no-show, if he can't make an impact, or if he can't play, I think this defense is going to continue to have problems.
Who's a guy who maybe flies under the radar? I know we've been talking about the 49ers ad nauseum for 20-something weeks now, so no one's flying that far under the radar. But who's a guy that maybe hasn't been an impact player in the past couple of weeks that you're looking at for this game against Minnesota and saying that guy's got to step up if the 49ers are going to host the NFC Championship game?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, great question. Great freaking question. And I'm gonna say Matt Breida.
Yes.
Because look, this game might rain. There's a possibility It's going to rain in Santa Clara, which means it could be hard to pass the ball, which means this game could come down to like a mud bowl contest between the two running games. In which case, that's a tough game because the Vikings have Dalvin Cook and Alex Madison, who's a really tough rookie running back.
Yep.
They're well equipped to run the ball 40 times if they have to. The Niners recently really aren't. I mean, they have Raheem Mostert, who's terrific, but they don't really want to give him more than 10, 15 carries. And then after him, Breida's kind of in the doghouse, and Coleman isn't in the doghouse but should be. Right. So if Breida could step up and give him 10 or 15 quality carries, the Niners really should be in business.
What do you respect most about Mike Zimmer and how he calls a defense? Because I thought he pitched something close to a perfect game against the Saints on Sunday.
Well, I mean, there's very few coaches in the league who you would consider truly innovative. And, he basically invented that double-A gap blitz. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, not to get too specific to our listeners, but, listeners, when you're watching on third down when the defense puts both linebackers right by the center, I mean, every team does it. That's Mike Zimmer's thing. Yeah. So, I mean, he's that creative on defense. He's kind of like a Sean Payton-level thinker on the defensive side. He's a legend.
Who's the best player on that defense? They got a couple of dudes up front that are just
Hunter.
Super freaks. I mean, is it just Danielle Hunter? Because
Hunter, but also their linebacker Eric Kendricks is really good too.
Yes, sir.
And one of the things that's interesting about this defense is they're the best at defending the tight end.
Yes,
because their linebackers are terrific in coverage. So if you notice that what they did against the Saints, really the key to stopping the Saints is taking away Jared Cook, because he's their big play guy, kind of like Kittle. I mean, he's the down-the-field guy more than Michael Thomas, and they really took him out of the game. There were no down-the-field plays to Jared Cook, and that's because Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks can really run with those guys, and I think it'll be interesting to see if he can run with George Kittle, because that's a different beast.
Absolutely. You look at that Vikings defense, though, and you could say that the secondary has fallen off a little. I mean, Rhodes is nowhere near the guy that he was just a couple of years ago. I still think that Harrison Smith is pretty good, but you could argue that he's not the same guy he was a couple of years ago. Do the 49ers have an advantage there, or are the wide receivers for the Niners inexperienced in Bourne and Debo? Are they too inexperienced to really exploit perhaps that mismatch?
Well, Emmanuel Sanders has the talent and the experience to definitely exploit it. I think that's a tough matchup for Xavier Rhodes, who used to be a hell of a player, but it really isn't anymore. And Emmanuel Sanders has the speed and quickness to give him problems. Okay. I think the Niners have the advantage there, but I also feel like on the other side, the Vikings, I think Cousins has better weapons than Garoppolo does. Okay. And Garoppolo has excellent weapons. Yeah. Excellent weapons. Yeah. Cousins has not only Thielen but Diggs. He's got these two wide receivers, so whichever one Sherman isn't covering, I mean, they're going to be able to go after Emmanuel Mosley or Taylor Witherspoon relentlessly just to see what they got early in a game. I mean, Emmanuel Mosley has played well, but we'll see how he responds in a playoff game. I mean, they really are equipped to go after the Niners' biggest weakness, which has been exposed a little bit the last few weeks.
When you look at Kyle Shanahan's offense and the run game that he wants to run the ball on first, second, and third down. If he never had to pass it, he wouldn't. But when you look at that and you see this defense, it's kind of two rocks banging against each other. Which one do you think has the advantage? Do you think that the 49ers can run the ball against this Vikings defense?
Absolutely, I think they can run the ball against this. I absolutely think they can. The only question for me is, can they get enough carries out of Raheem Mostert, or can they get someone else to complement him? Yeah. I think Raheem Mostert, should be able to continue to average 5 to 6 yards per carry. It's just he's not like Dalvin Cook, who's just going to come out and run the ball 33 times, or Derrick Henry. So that's my only question. I think Kyle Shanahan would like to run the ball, and it may be a little bit of a run game contest, because if you remember, the Vikings, really their offensive coordinator, their assistant head coach and offensive guru is Gary Kubiak, right? Who is the guy who Kyle Shanahan got his start under. So they have the same exact philosophy. They're both run-first teams. It could be both teams trying to run the ball 35 times.
I want to go back to a comment you made earlier. You would take Cousins over Jimmy Garoppolo. Why?
To me,
it's not outrageous. To be fair, it's not outrageous. But I don't agree with you, and I just want to hear your reasoning.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Cousins reads the defense better. He's more experienced. He's older. He's probably a little bit smarter. They're both really accurate. I think Cousins has a better deep ball. He's better with the play action. Jimmy Garoppolo is better from the shotgun. He's probably has more inner confidence. His teammates believe in him more. He's more of a team guy. I think he's like more one of the. I think everyone wants to be Jimmy's friend. On the Vikings, I don't know if everyone wants to be Kirk Cousins' friend. He's probably more of like a management guy. But that being, I think like here's the thing: I would rather have Kirk Cousins, and I think deep down, Kyle Shanahan would rather have him too.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? They're different styles, and Kirk Cousins is so Kyle Shanahan's guy, like very much a football.
Super nerd.
A football nerd, a football nerd. And Jimmy really isn't. I mean, Jimmy's more like play-by-feel kind of a guy, and Kyle's adapted to him. But there's something to be said for Kirk Cousins, and I think his nerdiness, kind of like Eli Manning's nerdiness, works against him. People just love tearing him down. And I don't know. I mean, if his name wasn't Kirk Cousins, he didn't have that face. Maybe he would. If he had Jimmy Garoppolo's face with that chin,
boy, yeah.
I think people might give him the benefit of the doubt.
Here's where I stand on it, just so that we're clear. He's fine. He's fine.
Yeah. He's average.
I don't trust him in big moments. I just see no ceiling on this guy. He's a bureaucrat of a quarterback. And you look at this league, you need entrepreneurs. You need guys like Deshaun Watson, who is being coaching malpractice is happening in Houston, and yet this dude, there's no offensive line. They all are standing on the sidelines. The ball is somehow magically snapped, and yet he somehow makes plays. He has one good receiver, well, I guess a couple, but nevertheless, like you need guys like Russell Wilson, who I don't know how he does it. It's just magic. Garoppolo is certainly not a transcendent quarterback, but he's got that little extra something that you need. I'll say this, though. That guy could throw 3 interceptions in any game, and it wouldn't shock me. I mean, it just feels like a ticking time bomb. That does not exist with Kirk Cousins. What Kirk is going to do is disappoint you slowly but surely, like a terrible child, for weeks and months on end, and then every now and again give you a glimmer of hope like he did against the Saints, and then go right back to being a blankhead. I mean, it's just different strokes. It's one of them has a ceiling, and probably a much higher ceiling and a lower floor. The other one is just kind of steady as you go. You know exactly what you're going to get. I can understand why Kyle would want the steadiness, but ultimately in the playoffs, in this modern NFL, I'm looking for a guy who can just have that little bit of moxie, that little bit of extra something. And what we've seen from Garoppolo in big games, I thought he was great against Seattle the second time around, and I thought he was absolutely outstanding against the Saints. I'm just looking for that. That said, again, the floor is lower, so that might be the difference in the ball game. Am I off base with that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, Cousins is not an ad-lib quarterback. He's a rhythm quarterback. And you think about it from Shanahan's perspective, his whole philosophy always has been, I don't care about ad-libbing. Mm-hmm. My system is great. It works. Just get the ball out on time. Please give me a rhythm quarterback. That's why he was so good with Matt Ryan. Right. I mean, Matt Ryan is not a guy who's going to ad-lib, but if you put Matt Ryan and Kyle Shanahan together for 2 years, you break records. So from Shanahan's perspective, forget all I don't even think he'd be interested in Russell Wilson from Shanahan's perspective.
No, I get you.
Give me a guy who stands in the pocket and throws the ball on time. That's why he's always liked Kirk Cousins. I feel like they could talk the game, the same language. They have the same, the same level of nerdiness, whatever you want to call it.
They're dorks.
Jimmy's just different. Jimmy is a little bit of a playmaker. Like, he can extend plays. Mm-hmm. The whole reason he tore his ACL is because he tried to stay in bounds and lower his shoulder. Like, Kirk Cousins wouldn't do that. So I think there is something to be said for that. And the one thing I want to say is, you mentioned Kirk Cousins and compared him to Derek Carr. That's a great comparison. Yeah. We've been overexposed to them. We know exactly what they're – we know what 100%. They are. Jimmy is kind of like Deshaun Watson. We don't really know. No. They have 2 seasons worth of starts, and they have flashed a lot of cool things, but they also have flashed some inexperience and things like that. And you kind of project onto them. Like, we think they can climb to these heights, but we don't really know. It's just we can't say that with Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins, so it's like we lose interest in them because there isn't that rainbow of possibility.
To be fair with Deshaun Watson, it wasn't as if he wasn't totally awesome at Clemson, whereas no one was watching Jimmy Garoppolo in college, and then he sat on the bench and just grew mystique and aura in New England. And I honestly do think that that experience in New England has been beneficial to him because the dude's got ice going through his veins, for better or for worse, because of having to spend time with the stoics that are Bill and Tom. But it's fun to watch a guy try to make plays. You think about when Garoppolo was at his most exciting and his best. You think about those 5 games he won at the end of 2017. They barely had a playbook. He just went out there and was winging it, and it was awesome, and everyone felt it. Kyle didn't like it all that much.
It's just not his style. I mean, Kyle wants his scheme to be the driving force of the offense. He wants everything to work on time because he thinks it does work on time.
If Kyle could play quarterback himself, he would, but ultimately he'd probably overthink it on his own end, and he probably didn't have the arm.
You know, he plays quarterback in practice. When the defense is getting ready, he stands in and throws the balls that they intercept, and he gets great pleasure out of it. I think he would love to run his own offense. I think you're absolutely right.
It's a tough break for old Kyle Shanahan, but you know, we all have to understand that the game is over for us at some point.
With Deshaun Watson, I think that's an interesting comparison between him and Garoppolo. I think they have a lot in common. I mean, to me, I watch Watson, like there's kind of like a good Deshaun and a bad Deshaun. Like he takes too many sacks. Some of those are on
100%,
him, like extending the play. But the thing is, like, good Deshaun is breathtaking. Like, it's like, holy mackerel, the plays he makes. And I think actually they're on a little bit different level than Jimmy. Like, Jimmy makes very impressive throws on third and long, but Deshaun's plays that he makes are like Patrick Mahomes level.
There are very few people in the history of the NFL that have a ceiling as high as Deshaun Watson. He doesn't get there all that often. It's not readily available, but when he gets there, it's like, whoa, that is next level. I mean, there's a reason Dabo called him the Michael Jordan of football. Like, you can kind of get it when you see him at the best of the best.
Right. He's got like the Aaron Rodgers ceiling, and where you would say Jimmy Garoppolo has like the Tony Romo ceiling.
Perfect comparison. People get upset when I say that. Tony Romo was a good quarterback. I don't know if he could have won a Super Bowl.
Hell of a quarterback.
Like, okay, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We're still.
And to me, Jimmy hasn't reached the Tony Romo level yet. I really, really respect Tony Romo, and that would be a hell of a career for Jimmy. Although he does have the ability to surpass that. Tony never did anything in the playoffs. Yeah,
that's true. But the only thing that Tony's remembered for in the playoffs, because we so love to be anchored. And Garoppolo's going to find out about this on Saturday. We so love to be anchored to initial impressions. It's all we remember about Tony Romo. He was holding. Why the hell was he was a backup third-string quarterback? That's why he was still holding. Why are we holding a hold against a starting quarterback? Like, how does that define him at the position that he actually plays? But alas, that's another issue for society. Grant, really do appreciate it. Always great stuff. We will dive into all of the ills of society another time, but for now, we got to let you go, and I'll see you down in Santa Clara tomorrow.
That'll be an important interview next time, man. Talk to you soon.
Later. Love Grant Cohn, and not just because he agrees, and in fact thinks that I'm a bit premature in my Tony Romo, Jimmy Garoppolo comparison. He holds Tony Romo in such a high esteem that he's telling me to pump the brakes a little bit on that, I guess now, future comparison. I see it right now. I think you have to take into account era. I know that Tony Romo just left us as a player. Garoppolo is Romo. And if you're telling me that Tony Romo could have never won a Super Bowl, I think you're telling bold-faced lies. I think that you're just trying to Skip Bayless me out of here. You're holding on to some narrative that doesn't really exist. You're not actually watching it. Because I'm telling you right now, Kirk Cousins won a playoff game. Anything is possible. Clearly, anything is possible. The Vikings, I don't think they're a worthy adversary. I think the 49ers come right. They will beat the Vikings by at least a touchdown, if not 2 scores. That said, you don't come right, Vikings will get you. They're built to kill. But love having Grant Cohn on. We'll do it again. Hopefully next week, because the 49ers are still playing. And if not, I guess we should have them on anyway just to figure out where the hell it all went wrong. Because we're both in agreement. I hope we're all in agreement at this juncture, 49ers are going to win. And that means they're going to get Seattle or Green Bay at home, NFC Championship game, Sunday the 19th. Yes, Sunday the 19th. And that will be the biggest game in Levi's Stadium history. In the meantime, we got to pay some bills. You're listening to KNBR Tonight on The Sports Leader.